It's official. DC Comics is now a Boy Loves publisher. For no reason at all, Tim Drake is now gay. They're calling him bisexual, but he's only into boys, so he's gay. This is from Batman Urban Legends number 6, where for no explained reason, Tim has broken up with Stephanie Brown off-panel and decided to date this boy instead, who apparently knows that Tim is Robin because why else would this conversation happen in the middle of a fight? Quote, "If I don't make it out, can I ask a favor? Please, tell Tim Drake he helped me realize my true self, who I am. Tell him, well, he probably knows. He's the smartest guy I've ever met. But tell him I wished we could have finished our date." Just the laziest writing you can imagine. Tim isn't bisexual. That's not because he's hooked up with Cassie Sandmark, Greta Hayes, Zone Wilkins, and Stephanie Brown, the latter of whom he's been with off and on for years and even wanted to help raise a child with her. That would be a clear indication that he's not into dudes when literally everyone he's dated isn't a dude. That's as clear as you can get, but that's not the proof. The proof is that we can read his thoughts. See, there are these wonderful things called thought balloons and captions in comics, and in those are usually the thoughts of the characters in the story. So if a character wanted to do a thing that they wouldn't express in their actions, it would be in their thought balloons and captions, in those internal conversations that you have with yourself. In the 32 years he's been around, he's never once had a fleeting or gay bisexual thought. Dozens of writers have written him. He's been around scores of very attractive, very fit boys. His best friend is Superboy. Nary a fleeting thought about shagging any of them. Never happened. Now, some people on the internets like to think that he's bi because they want him to fuck Superboy. That's about it. There's no actual indication anywhere in Tim's history that he likes to gobble the D. Tim is one of my favorite DC characters. I've read his stories for most of my life. He's not bisexual. This is just lazy writing by Megan Fitzmartin, who ironically is actually a comic book fan. How she got her job at DC is still somewhat questionable, but she says in an interview that she came from a strict religious home, so she wasn't allowed to watch much, but her father was a comic book fan, and she would read his comics and watch the movies and TV shows. So she's legit. She says she's a fan of Tim and Stephanie, claiming, quote, "Tim and Stephanie are so interesting to me as a dynamic. Stephanie is so unapologetically herself, and a mess, and living her best life, which is also a mess. Tim is, I think, drawn to that aspect of her, and it's so cool. Even growing up, I was like, this is so cool to see the struggle of these two characters. I think Stephanie is who I wanted to be, and Tim was sort of who I felt that I was." Ah, so you break them up off panel to have Tim shack up with some blonde boy cause reasons. Why tell the story you're clearly invested in, the one that would be interesting given how much you like the pairing, when you can inexplicably make Tim have the gay? I know you're claiming he's bisexual, but he's just dumped his girlfriend off panel to date another boy. He's gay. This is lazy writing. I don't mean lazy as in it's unintentional. Megan knows exactly what she's doing. I mean lazy in that she's doing what everyone else is doing. It's the trend to make every character have the gay. You're not actually breaching new ground by making yet another well-established character suddenly flip their sexuality just to appeal to a bunch of NPCs on social media who'll never buy the book. None of this is going to bring in new readers. None of this will bring back old readers. We all know where this is going. There's no story here. There's no grand thing that's going to happen to shake up Tim's life. This is purely about shipping characters and playing politics. That's it. Now, it could be that Megan didn't decide this and was just assigned to write the story in the book no one actually reads. Nevertheless, it's still an example of the laziness that passes for storytelling in modern comics. This is the best DC can come up with for Tim. We'll make him bi, but really gay because he's never dating another girl after this. You have nothing else to offer. There's nowhere else you can go with the character. DC Comics has been reduced to being nothing more than the Boy Loves publisher. Boys Love, or yaoi, is gay manga written by women for women. Of course, I don't know many women who are into seeing two dudes make out. It's usually guys writing about two women shagging, but usually in yaoi or BL, one of the boys is basically a girl. Very passive, submissive, unsure, possibly effeminate. So you can see how this might appeal to a certain type of woman. This genre is very popular in progressive circles, especially among feminists, like the ones who run the whisper networks in the comic book industry. It's very common in these stories for all the guys to be gay or bisexual to an inexplicable degree. You'll find fewer gay dudes in a gay bar than you will in these comics. And if the boys have any interest in girls at all, it's fleeting and can easily be dropped. The genre also has tons of non-consensual sexual encounters that are usually treated as passionate and just an expression of the assaulter's uncontrollable love of the victim. I don't know if DC is going to go that far, but the rest of it should sound pretty familiar, because that's what we've been seeing with way too many male, usually young male characters in DC and Marvel comics. To call this yaoi, which means no climax, no point, no meaning, seems fair since most of these stories have no climax, no point, and no meaning. They just exist to appeal to people who will never actually buy comics, but will post about their love of the changes on social media for about 3 minutes and then promptly forget this ever happened. And if you hear a cascade of rumblings in the distance, don't worry. That's just Chuck Dixon rolling his eyes as DC Comics ruins yet another character he helped make popular. At this point, I think it's probably intentional, like someone saying, "Who did Chuck Dixon write? Let's fuck him up." I'm sure this news is going to make the rounds and upset all the right people, as a Twitterati would say. But ultimately, it just proves my point that mainstream American comics are out of ideas. If anyone working at DC actually had an interesting idea of what to do with Tim Drake, they wouldn't have made the boy bisexual, but really gay. Literally out of nowhere. You would have come up with something that actually made sense and would breathe new life into a character who got sidelined because y'all decided to fuck over all your 90s characters. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.